Welcome to Soil to Souls. I'm Shannon with Seeds of Wellness, and with me today is Paul Romanek with Citrus Solutions.
Hello, Paul Romanek.
Thank you.
It's commonly mispronounced. Happy to be here and have a conversation about environmental health.
Yes, molds and with all the water today,
Yes.
it's a whole nother issue, right?
Yes, the phone started ringing at 6:30, but I will say the bulk of my clients are not responding to water intrusion, but really the environment they created in their home inadvertently that led to the development of mold. So temperature, humidity, stagnant air, these are conditions conducive to the growth of mold. Every time we come and go in and out of our house, we're introducing mold spores into the environment. What we don't want to do is provide them conditions conducive to their growth.
Okay, so, and of course we know that, every time we open a window, we open our garage door, come in and out, our pets come in and out, kids, etc. We bring mold spores in with us. I mean, we can't avoid them.
That's correct.
And so I guess what you're saying is that, yes, these mold spores come in, they flow through our house, but the important thing is that they don't find a home and stay.
Right.
Okay.
Those conditions are common, especially here in the Southeast. There's about 10 or 11 states that really don't have a mold issue, and you'll always see it, there's super dry climates. But we can create conditions in our home using dehumidifiers. We can be alerted to a situation by having humidistats in our home that are telling us what the humidity levels are. And then we want to keep air flowing. And you always want to keep air flowing anyway. You want air movement takes particulates out of the air as you cycle them through your home. In my home, in the spring and fall, I put my heat and air system fan on manual. And that way I'm still moving air and I'm still filtering it.
You keep it going.
Yeah, so if your thermostat doesn't trigger your heat or the air, you're not filtering any air. So when you think about fall and spring, when you have your most problems, you're not reaching temperatures that trigger your thermostat.
I think that's a common misunderstanding with putting in these expensive dehumidifiers and adding them to our system, as well as adding the very thick, really good charcoal filters and things, is that, well, if your air conditioning or your heat isn't running, then it's not doing anything. It's not circling through and cycling that air to catch those mold spores.
Sure.
I keep mine where the fan is constantly going, whether it is air conditioning or heat's running, there's movement.
That's right, and that's what you want. And I wish all my clients would do that, especially in the spring and fall. People who are prone to allergies and especially can reduce a lot of that contact. When you walk through a home, micron-sized particles go airborne, and they're airborne for about 45 minutes. So if your fan is pulling, if you're pulling air through your returns, through that filter, that gives you a chance to get some of that out of your house.
Especially when we're constantly moving.
That's right. You got dogs.
Dogs running through the house, shaking
kids,
everything
that's
up,
right.
kids,
That's right.
all of that, yes.
And, people that have carpets and rugs, that's one of the largest filters in your home. So that gets into that rug, and once it's trapped, you vacuum, you can actually get that out of the house as well. But, I tell people all the time, dust doesn't just say, oh, there's a dining room table.
Right.
You're going to notice it there, but it's on your bedding, it's on your clothes in your closet, it's everywhere. And the more you can get that into your ventilation system and out of the house, the better are.
And that's one of the things with the design, especially if it's a new house or you're looking at an old house, it's looking at where the returns are.
Right.
Making sure that those are put in the right place, because you can always tell, is this house really dusty? And then you know that those returns aren't picking up as well as they should.
So the whole time I've been in the industry, and I got into the carpet cleaning industry in '82, the first thing I noticed was dark lines under bedroom doors,
Okay.
where the doors closed, and almost always you would see those bedrooms didn't have return air vents. But you go into the hallway and there's a
Right
big
there.
return air vent in the ceiling.
Yeah.
And the problem is, in order for that return to work, it's pulling that air under the door, and that's what's creating that dark line under the door. That's the air that you're breathing.
Yeah.
So,
So check it. Check your doors underneath your bedroom doors.
and you know, it's very often where, if there are bathrooms in those bedrooms, it's very often where mold will start to grow because there's no return air ventilation.
And there's so much humidity with the shower, and not everybody turns the fan on while they're taking a shower, and that builds up, and yeah. And then depending on if that fan is actually vented to the outside or not, or if it's vented to your attic, and then that's just collecting, that's adding humidity to an already hot area.
Sure, and I'm guilty. You know, we're supposed to run our bathroom fans for 20 minutes after we take a shower, but you know, in
I cut off the
a
line.
hectic
I'm
pace,
on the go.
that's exactly
I'm on the
right.
go, and I just cut
That's
off the
exactly
line.
right.
Yeah.
And you know, teenagers are notorious.
Oh, they
That's
don't
why
turn
I
them on.
start in a teenager's room. Yeah, they're not interested in any of that.
No, it's loud, it's noisy, whatever, you know.
That's why, you know, just whether it is built into your thermostat or you have little humidistats around the house, those are great tools to keep an eye on where your humidity levels are. When we see really chronic problems, your humidity levels are up in the 70s, and you want to keep it below 50.
Okay.
So if you can keep your humidity below 50, that takes away the key trigger for mold, which
Okay.
is moisture.
The moisture that's in the air.
Yeah.
It's so of course I'm working with a lot of sensitive clients, and so one of the things we can see in lab work if they're reacting to mold or allergens or something like that. You know, so we'll look at an IgE with mold to really get an idea of what's going on with their immune system and how their body's reacting to different species of mold. I know a lot of people, a lot of practitioners will order an IgG, but that just tells us if we've been exposed to it. And every single person has been exposed to mold at some point in their life. They go outside, they're exposed to mold. You go to a big box store, or who knows where, a restaurant, and I'm sure there's mold growing in there. So when we look at those lab works and we see that exposure, then we have to find it. And so, you know, that's why, you know, I'll reach out to you and be like, we gotta find this mold.
Sure.
You know?
And you know, what we do when we go into a home, we have a great lab that we use to process these samples. We take one outdoor. We take as many as we need indoor, typically 2, and we take those in areas where are traditionally problematic areas. If we detected visible signs of mold, so on, it determines where we take the samples. We send that sample off to the lab, and because of that outside test, they'll not only be able to tell us what types of mold we have and how much of each type, but they also give us a rating of whether that house is growing that mold internally from inside the house. And that's really a concern for us. Informationally, we want our clients to know that, because if this evolves to the point where we're doing a treatment, one of my things I'll say, if I'm getting along really well with the client, and I usually do, on treatment day, I'll say, I don't ever want to see you again. Here's how you got here. You have enough information now not to get here again.
Right.
And so arming yourself against future infestations is critical to us. We just want our clients to be healthy. We do this for the health of it. For us, It's not about construction or cosmetics. It's about your indoor air quality and how that's impacting your health. I want you to have the information that you have, so you can draw a parallel between the molds that are discovered in the air samples with the mycotoxins and the types of molds that are detected when they have their testing done.
So, and one of the things, so when you do testing, one, of course, I understand, we gotta know what's growing outside, because that's important, and what that spore count is, because that gives us an idea of what's growing, if it's growing inside, or if it's just coming in from outside. But when you do the test inside, and you pick the areas that, you know, this is most likely, do you really need to check every room, do an air sample from every room?
Well, the same system that can get dust out of your home is circulating mold spores around your house.
Okay.
So you can test every room. What you're gonna find is similar results until you get to that area that's really feeding.
That's feeding it.
Yes.
Okay.
And you know, at that point, it can give you real insight into what you're dealing with. And we'll be looking at ventilation systems, return air vents. We'll be, determining what that cause for that specific area might be, so we know how to avoid it in the future. The real concerning levels are when you see a mold that you have none of that type of mold in the outdoor sample and you have it in the house.
In-house. So,
Because at that point, it's pretty much a no-brainer. You're cultivating that specific species of mold inside your house, and that has to be dealt with.
and those are gonna be like the really bad molds, the Stachybotrys, the Chitonium.
Yeah.
What are some of the other ones that you look, because I mean, like Aspergillus and Penicillium, those are on the trees.
Well,
For the most part.
Chaetomium and Stachybotrys, they're known as the black molds. It's not a color issue. It's a type of mold that is much more toxic than others. But what we see a lot of people reacting to is actually the Penicillium aspergillus type molds, and that is just because they're so prolific. So any of those types of molds can be problematic long term based on your exposure.
Right.
So we'll see people's response time to a treatment be directly proportionate to the length of time they've been exposed.
So, and you're talking about exposure in high levels,
Yes.
not us walking around outside.
Correct. Right.
It's more exposure, high levels, so like fall, when the leaves start falling and those mold spores are going everywhere.
Correct.
I know my client, when I'm working with people, especially people who have chronic bronchitis, they have that cough they can't get rid of, they're fatigued, they're tired, there's skin rashes, that's one of the things that we start looking at their metabolic panel and their CBC to see, okay, what are you reacting to? What's your body doing? And what can we eliminate? And what is these possible exposures? If it is mold, I mean, it's not necessarily mold, but sometimes we can rule it out, that at
Right.
least we're able to take that next step in creating that protocol for that client. And then we have the neurotoxin molds, the molds that produce gases or mycotoxins that
Yeah.
can be neurotoxic. And those are those more of the ones that we find in the bathrooms? Or what would you say you mainly find those in?
So if they've had repetitive water intrusion,
Okay.
especially if they didn't deal with it promptly, that's very common. The high humidity areas, behind washer dryers, in bathrooms and so on and so forth. Some of the worst I've ever seen have been around in utility rooms.
Oh, yeah.
Water heaters and janitorial sinks and things like that. So high levels of humidity and heat, it just becomes an incubator.
Okay.
So any level of Stachybotrys and Chaetomium is concerning.
Okay.
You shouldn't have that in your living environment
Right.
at all. extreme high levels of other molds, Basidiospores, Cladosporium, the Penicillium, Aspergillus types. You get to a certain level, they're going to cause, in certain people, in varying degrees, they're going to cause problematic situations.
And they also, I find that they also can, long-term exposure cause hormone issues as well. I see a lot of hormonal imbalances. That is a possibility. And sometimes the molds are behind the walls in like the main room that they don't really know they're breathing it in.
Right.
And with the life cycle of whatever mold it is behind there, they can see their symptoms increase during certain times versus others.
Yeah.
So I find that very, very common too. And I think one of the things that I get frustrated with is when you hear people, they're like, oh, you got to rip out all your walls and everything. And so your product is different than that. And so if someone has mold in their house, and let's say it's growing behind a sheetrock, so there's no visible mold, and usually you don't see it very often either. But if it's growing behind a wall and you don't see it, will it come up on the air quality test?
If it's in the air to any degree, yes, it's going to show up.
Can it get in the air from behind if it's growing behind like a sheetrock?
Right, and one of the things about sheetrock that we do, we test the moisture levels of the sheetrock because we're looking for those type of situations. We have a camera that we can make a tiny hole and go in and look 360 degrees when we're suspicious of an area.
So you see that moisture being high behind, maybe it's an outdoor wall or something, and you're like, okay, this is, because sometimes the roof leaks and it's dripping down between the sheetrock and the wall, and you don't even know it because it's not enough water to kind of come out in the floor.
Sure, and there's something called surface tension. If you've ever seen water run down a slant, you would think it would drop off at the immediate point, but it will stick surface tension to that area, to that slant, and it could follow a roof truss, and your leak could be in the middle of your roof, but you're seeing it at an exterior wall because it hits that joint and then comes down between your drywall. So testing the humidity levels of the moisture levels of the drywall can give us a good idea of where to look for a problematic situation. But I will say, in all conditions, the real problem is the air that you're breathing. And no matter what conditions we've treated, it's that abatement of symptoms that tells us, we've accomplished our goal, which is to improve people's health, especially longer term exposure, joint pain, brain fog, is anxiety. I mean, anxiety can be one of the most debilitating things your clients are going through. And living in a home that's making you sick, I don't know what's more anxious than that. We did a job, and I've had some sad cases, and one little girl I really wanted to help was chromosome damaged, and she had no real function, and the mother was sick and had all the respiratory symptoms, and the daughter had them, and the daughter couldn't blow her own nose. Now her mother was blowing her own nose all the time. Her daughter couldn't do that, so she was having to suction her sinuses. The little girl didn't know why. So this was just a terrible process for the little girl. The mother called me 8 o'clock the next morning, and she said, Paul, I woke up this morning and I blew my nose once like a normal human being, and I didn't have to torture my daughter. And broke down crying on the phone. I was crying. Another person that was in the office was undone by it, and the doctors couldn't improve that little girl's life, what we did. And when you see something like that, what we really want our end goal is to improve their health and through improving the air quality in the home. And sometimes it's testing for volatile organic compounds, CO2 levels, formaldehyde levels, you know, all these other tests that we do at that time. We're trying to determine the quality of the air and determine if anything needs to be done to rectify any problem.
I think people don't realize that sheetrock today has formaldehyde in it. So these off-gassing, when you buy new furniture, it's off-gassing. And it's like this constant off-gassing in your home that you're being exposed to.
That's right.
And so I say, if you're gonna be doing work on your house or you're building a new house, get formaldehyde-free sheetrock. Because I mean, it is available.
That's right.
There's a lot of green products out there that don't off-gas or have low VOCs. I know I'm very mindful of what you bring into your home is very important. These air filters, like I use air filters just because I live around so many trees. I've got trees all around me, so I know there is mold coming in and out every single day. You know, I try not to give it that environment, and I try and keep my filtration running, and then I put in extra filters. So
That's
like I use a HEPA filter. That is one of those that you just set in your room and you plug it in.
Right.
Okay. And I don't know if it is capturing everything. Do you feel those work? Because I don't like to use anything with EMFs and Bluetooth. Like at my house, I no Bluetooth, no EMFs. Try and protect that as much as possible because that affects your health too. There's all these things that can affect your health if
That's
you're
right.
not aware of it. Do you feel those work?
You know, anything that you can do to pull that out of the air. So you mentioned sheetrock, paint emits VOCs, flooring, all this stuff emits VOCs. So anytime you're moving your air by running your fan on manual, any filtration devices that you're using to pull that content and clean as much as possible can only improve your conditions. You mentioned EMFs. We test for EMFs now.
Okay.
And one of the things that prompted me was a woman who had a electric meter on her exterior wall in her bedroom with her headboard right up against that wall. Now she pays, I think it was $15 a month to have it physically read, but within days of having that meter taken down, her symptoms started to abate. And
sometimes if you can't have that replaced, there are Faraday cages that you can put around those that help to prevent, but you should never have those meters, the smart meters that the power companies put, they should never be against a outside wall that you spend a lot of your time in.
That's right.
And they should never be on your bedroom wall, because same thing, whenever if I'm going to a home visit or doing a client, I check the EMFs first. I mean, like, I check the EMFs in their house, especially if they're having rashes, if they're having neurologic symptoms, and there's so many, and EMFs affect hormones too.
Right.
So you're having sweats, you're just, cold, hot, weight gain, all of these things that so many different things can impact.
That's right. We're seeing such a burst of chronic illness.
Yes.
And it could be a soup of things, right?
It
if it's not going to be a thing that's causing this, what we're going to find it's a combination of stuff. At least I believe that. And the more things you can eliminate that are potentially problematic from your indoor air environment, the better you're going to be. Being 70-something years old, I was aware and an adult during the Jimmy Carter era when there was a huge energy shortage. We started wrapping our houses in material and sealing every crack around every window and door with foam, and we put all of this effort into making our homes energy efficient. Now the only thing tighter than our homes are our coffins, and I'm afraid there's a parallel between the two. And we need to adapt our own home to keep our indoor air quality and our environmental safety at the highest level possible. So those filter devices, you know, I think anything you can do to move air, filter air, it can only increase your chances of having the healthiest possible indoor air environment.
So with the like the charcoal filters, like, you know, you've got all different box sizes in your HVAC for your filter. You have the 1 inch, the 2 inch, and it goes all the way up. And you know, when you're looking at that, sometimes you can replace it. Like you can replace the small filter size with a larger filter size.
Right.
And you have those, the MERV ratings, and the MERV ratings go all the way up. Is it worth getting the charcoal and the MERV 13 and, you know, the higher rating MERV filters?
Right. You have to think it is. You kind of have a habit of trust.
I hope it is. That's what.
That's right. Yeah, trust in the technology. They're developing this stuff. I remember when the ultraviolet light treatment
Right.
Came out. You know, my consideration is first they develop that technology. They're releasing this data, and it's got to be better than doing nothing, right? And so
right?
there's no one simple solution to, you know, a healthy indoor air environment. The real concern is having that level of awareness and taking some time, you know, to educate yourself and think about what's going on. That collector return air vent in the hallway and your children's bedrooms typically don't have return air ventilation. That may have saved a builder several $100s at the time of construction. It's going to cost you more than that to do trunk lines off and put returns in those bedrooms. But if your children have chronic respiratory problems, does that not seem like a decent investment? And you have to put a value, a return on your investment. If a better filter, a better charcoal filter, thicker, that can have a return on investment, because nothing is more costly than bad health.
That's true. And you know, most of my clients, they're kind of at the end. They've tried everything. No one can help them. They haven't gotten better. And so people come to me from all over, and they have all varying different conditions. And the goal is to get to the root cause, to let them live their best life and have a happy and healthy life.
That's right.
You know, without pain, be able to function, you know, work on all different angles, but it's to get to the root cause. So sometimes to get to that root cause, it's like an onion. We have to peel back those layers of the onion, and we have to rule things out. Because if you use certain herbs or supplements to help with the symptoms, now we're just symptomatic treating. We're not getting to the root cause. We're not figuring out what's actually going on. Right. And sometimes we have to rule out these environmental issues. That's the first thing that we start. Like, take your toxic inventory. What is your internal and external toxic load? That's where we start.
Right.
What's in your house? What do you wash your clothes in? Do you use endocrine disruptors like Glade, Febreze, or what, you know, any type of air, you know, air scent. Thank you. Any air scent. You know, what's in your home? What do you wash? What do you put on your face? What's your you know, you got to look at all of those ingredients to see what's going on with that person, so we can try and eliminate some of those things.
And you know, as you go through the process of eliminating and evaluating your progress, abatement of symptoms and so on. So for instance, you get your mycotoxin test done, and you start a process, binders to flush out the bulk of that fungal colony, go on the treatment. If your house is still emitting tons and tons of mold microbes into your air that you're breathing, you're not gonna
get better.
Be able to impact your health.
Just spinning your wheels. You may feel better one day and then not the next. And I think and going back to the mycotoxins. So of course, you know, we have people that say, oh, you know, mushrooms, that's mold. And, you know, we have to make sure we clarify that, you know, fungi, and then under fungi, we have mold, and then mushrooms is a type of fungi, just like molds is a type of fungi, but completely different. Our mushrooms are definitely more are medicinal, where a lot of our molds are not. We don't want those in excess. But mycotoxins being a gas that is emitted from mold, and majority we find in food. They're mainly in food, but they can be in our home. When you do an air quality test, does that come back as well?
What we're really saying is the mold spore count. And then you draw
parallels.
That's right. And a lot of times it's a level of experience, you know, part science, part art. You know, we're interviewing our clients for decades. I've been advising my clients, so I would have clients that were diagnosed with fibromyalgia, lupus, Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue syndrome, Lyme disease. And I would ask them, when you leave your home, keep a diary, write down how you feel. If you're gone for days, did your symptoms abate? How are you feeling? Pay attention to your body. Because if you're not paying attention, you can't communicate to a practitioner how you're responding to change in environment, so to give them the information they need to be effective in treating your health. So, you know, I would have clients go away for 2 weeks, and I would tell them, keep your diary a week before while you're gone, and when you come home, and within 2 days they're calling me, and their symptoms come crushing back. So if I'm saying that, I've got this mold test results from the lab, and they're relating their symptoms to me, and we're going through a history of their home, water intrusion, we're looking at humidity levels, moisture levels, and building materials, we're taking our readings. We come to as much of a conclusion as we can, and then we give that information to the client, and they can make better decisions about their indoor environment and their personal health.
And I think, so like we know, okay, we found this mold spore, so then we know, okay, well, there's a mycotoxin associated with this mold. You know, we can kind of tell that with the life cycle. With the, you had mentioned the urine test, and yes, will order some of those urine mycotoxin tests, but I don't order them all the time. Like that, every client who comes to me, mold isn't necessarily the cause. You can tell based on the symptoms and their history and the blood work, if we need to look down that, need to go further down that to have the home inspected for mold, but not always. With the mycotoxin test, the one thing that can be an issue is if someone has been exposed for an extended period of time and their detoxification organs have been impacted. The urine test is only measuring what's being detoxed. So we can tell only what's being detoxed, not what's actually in their body.
Right.
So, and then of course we're not getting any of the fat soluble toxins either, because those are eliminated through the stool. So one of the things that I like better is really to look at blood work, blood chemistry, to really get an idea, and then if we need to use that urine test for after we have restored the body, improve the body. Let's make sure you're not getting exposure to it now that we know your detoxification organs are working better. I find that more helpful that way than doing it in the beginning. Unless someone just like, no, I just want to know what's it, what I am detoxing, what I am being exposed to. Then that's helpful, it gives a little bit more information. But I think it is one of those things that we have to look at to make sure that they are detoxing, because they may not be detoxing the mold, it may be staying in their body, and that becomes a bigger issue as well.
The overriding issue is getting people to pay attention.
Yes.
If you're just casually going to a doctor and saying, do me. And
Give me a drug for the symptom. I have a headache. Let's make the headache go away, not find the root cause.
That's exactly right. So educating people to gather information and you know, I tell people all the time, no one should know more about your treatment plan than you do.
Exactly.
You have to, no one can communicate how you feel and what you're responding to better than you can. No, you know, doctors, you know, if we had psychic doctors, it'd be a whole different world. We don't. That you have to understand what's going on with you to help your practitioner resolve your problems. And information.
Not just, you know, give me a pill for the headache.
Yeah.
You know, why is the headache happening? And it could also be, you know, a lot of people say, oh no, I don't have mold in my house. I can't have mold in my house. Well, you know, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but it can also come from your food. I mean, our food system and the way that food is delivered to us in the U.S. I mean, our fruits and vegetables can be 2 and 3 years old before they actually make it to your table.
That's exactly right.
I mean, and people don't realize this, and I feel that we're gonna see more issues down the road because our soil health is so unhealthy, and you can only be as healthy as your external environment. So look around you where you live. Do you have an ecosystem? Is there an ecosystem? And as our farmland becomes more toxic and we no longer have living soil, that's going to create more harmful molds growing in the soil, which is going to be in our end product. So we're going to see a lot more like foodborne illnesses and stuff like that. So I mean, we can see like ochratoxins and things like that in food, coffee, tea. Those are cereals, grains. Those are like the worst offenders.
Right.
So when we go over talking to that client, what do you eat? Tell me how you eat, what you eat. Nuts are.
And it's not just like the grains that we're consuming. It's the grains that our farm-raised beef, are consuming.
Which should not be consuming grain. They should just be consuming grass.
That's right.
You know.
Right. So that when penicillin shows up like that, if you do some research, they'll tell you, yes, it's grain-borne, this, that, and the other thing, and kind of ancillary to that, and in your home and in your indoor air environment.
Right.
So that information is important at that point. So yes, you may have an issue from grain-borne molds, but you also may be getting that contamination from your indoor air environment.
Right.
And again, it all comes down to paying attention and learning as much as you can. And if one of the reasons we charge so little for air quality testing is we want to encourage people to either verify there's an issue or verify there's not an issue, so you can have that information and move them forward with that eliminated as a likelihood.
So, for you, you're going to come in, let's say, like I've referred clients to you that I've been to their home or I've seen their blood work and I'm like, okay, we got an issue. Sometimes I don't even have to I don't go to their home. I look at their blood work and I'm like, yeah, we definitely have a mold issue here. It's coming from somewhere that you are around, whether it's work or home or food. Usually the food one I can tell on their lab work,
Right.
if it's coming from food. But if it's coming from the home, and I refer a client to you, go out, you look at the home, look for moisture, look for all of the big heavy hitters, and you take an air sample, and that's a sterilized air sample, so it can't be contaminated. How is that? Like, walk me through.
So what we have is we have a vacuum,
Okay.
and it pulls 75 liters of air through this cassette, and then we seal that cassette.
Okay.
And we send that off to the lab.
So that person A's home, and then you go to person B's home, there won't be any cross-contamination. Okay.
Correct. And there's also a chain of custody So we seal that, the lab receives it, they document, now they have that custody of that, and then we get the report. The only reason that's important is like in a landlord situation,
Yes.
when, you know.
Georgia's really strict with that too.
Yeah, one of the heartbreaking aspects of what we do are this vast number of single moms in apartments
Yeah.
that are heavily contaminated.
And the landlord, they don't want to do anything
They,
about it.
they paint over it.
Yeah, they brush you off.
And they
Yeah.
disturb it, which is the worst part.
Yeah.
Because the defense mechanism of mold is to store.
You get everything. It's survival of the fittest.
That's right.
And then you want to really, it wants to grow faster
Yeah.
when you try and kill it.
It breaks my heart, but I did have a great mom. I'll quickly tell you, she was a hairdresser. She paid for her testing with 5s and 10s, with tip money from doing people's hair. The landlord wouldn't do anything. We determined her son was probably exposed for 7 years. She didn't have a lot of symptoms, he had them all.
Yeah.
And she paid for treatment. Of course, I discounted it down to next to nothing. And it took several days for him to have any improvement whatsoever.
Gotta get out of the system.
Yep, and the longer they're exposed, the longer it can take. He had the brain fog. For a 16-year-old, it was totally debilitating. And when he went on the first treatments to start knocking down that fungal colony, he started to see some improvement. When his brain fog had abated, he was a totally different child. And that mother did what she had to do to improve her son's health. You can't wipe the smile off of either one. It was totally life-changing for them, for a mom to have a healthy son, but for that little boy. As an aside, I'd given him, he was a musician, had played the sax, and I'd given him 7 harmonicas in the various keys, and told him one of the rules was you can't eat cookies and play the harmonica at the same time. And my last text from him was, I feel great, the only drag is I don't get to eat cookies and play the harmonica. You know, there's a lot of reward for what I do. There's a considerable amount of heartbreak, especially for tenants who are not gonna, you know, their landlords are not gonna do the right thing. But when I get those calls, and a lot of times it's 8 o'clock in the next morning because they can't wait to tell me.
Call you, yes,
And
yes.
then it makes the effort all the more worthwhile.
Yeah, no, it absolutely. And with, and you know, just like that, once you go in and like you treat the home for mold to kill all of the mold spores, then I can start working to rebuild and really get to the root cause, because that's just one cause. You know, we have so many imbalances throughout life that can impact our overall wellness, but we can't do anything until we get the environmental air quality cleared up, because it's also, we have to start working on the gut microbiome.
Yep.
Because that mold becomes part of our gut microbiome and it offsets it. And when people take, you know, they go and they get something over the counter, you know, like they read online, oh, I should get this because it'll kill mold, or I should go and get this antifungal from, you know, that's a pharmaceutical, or I should, what they don't realize is, just like with everything, when you kill something, but you don't kill it all, only the strong have survived. Now those strong are reproducing, recolonizing, so we have to start from getting, and even with herbals, with the antimicrobial, antiviral, antifungal, you know, etc. With the herbals, they're not discerning, like you're the good guy, you're the bad guy, you know, they don't discern from that. So you're still wiping it clean. You know, that's why you have to be so careful, and it has to be tailored to the individual.
To the individual.
Based on their history, their medications, conditions, you know, the consultation process is very in-depth and can be overwhelming, but to rebuild that gut microbiome is so important. And, you know, we can work with things like increasing oxygen and, you know, so that those aerobic, you got your aerobic and your anaerobic, so we can work on that way. So hopefully we can, you know, kind of save some of the good guys.
Sure, and as you pull that veil away, as you mitigate symptoms,
Yes.
then that becomes more clear, and then that informational side, sharing with you those changes in how they feel, direct you to the next steps
Exactly.
to resolve other external environmental issues that they might be dealing with, as well as any kind of hereditary or chronic problems that they have on top of everything else.
Because autoimmune conditions, we see that so much. Which
Yes.
There's so many different things that can trigger the autoimmune response. But the main thing is that it's not like, oh, I have to be on medication forever. Yes, there's always your outliers. But autoimmune conditions can be, it doesn't go away, but you can prevent the flares. You can prevent the flares.
Yep.
You know, so those are all things that we can do. And so once you've identified the mold, identified there's a problem, you come in and you treat the home by fogging and pressurized.
Sure.
Tell me a little, because you don't have to be tearing down all of your, you don't have to
Correct.
rip out your shower and, you know, put holes in your walls and then have to rebuild it.
If we do an analysis of your home and we think that's necessary, we're gonna send you in that direction. But what we do, the first thing we do when we've identified a need for our process is we go into that home.
Right.
We turn off the heat or the air, we put the fan on manual, and we take a product that is grapeseed extract, grapefruit seed extract, hydrogen peroxide, and a very strong vinegar.
And just to clarify, you cannot make this at home. Do not try and
Don't,
mix those
believe
things
me.
at home. It has to be mixed in a lab in a safe environment. So do not do that.
That's exactly right. And that goes with a whole bunch of household products
Yes,
people
never
generate.
mix,
They
never
create poison out there,
Yes, they do.
thinking they're doing the right thing. So we take 90 PSI compressors and we turn that into what's known as a dry fog.
Okay.
It was a process that was created to treat the air in mines. And so we treat the return air ventilation.
Okay.
At that point, it goes through the system, decontaminates the unit, decontaminates the supply vents, and then we shut the air down completely. We put up temporary walls, whatever we have to do to compartmentalize the structure, and then we fog space by space by space with a very high pressure fog that can follow mold back however it came in and decontaminate it. If we have to go into walls, we can go into walls. If we have an issue with attics, and basically attics are outdoor space.
Right.
You have soffits around your house. We can't create a pressure in an attic, but if our product can contact a mold, it can at least mitigate that growth. But at that point, crawl spaces, basements, we can treat that structure. At that point, we're gonna wrap up our equipment and we're gonna walk out that door. And mold is gonna come in the house. Mold spores are gonna enter the house.
As soon as you open the door.
What you need now is to remember everything we told you about the conditions conducive to growth. Monitor your indoor air environment and prevent it from reoccurring. If you have water intrusion, you want to get it dried up in about 48 hours. If you can't, if it's so extensive, then you want to monitor your conditions, because any time after that you could again have mold growth in your home. So prompt action to water intrusion, keep your humidity level below 50%, and keep your air moving.
Okay, and so, and just to clarify, so if you come into their home, you're gonna tell them if you see an issue like a leaky pipe or something, they need to get that fixed first before you treat it, because otherwise you're gonna treat it and then it's gonna come right back because you didn't fix the issue.
That's exactly right. And when we send out a proposal, it says it right there in the
Right there,
proposal.
you gotta fix this
You've
first.
got it, yes.
Yes.
And it's not that I don't trust people to do that, but,
You would think they would, just be,
well,
protect your
it's a
investment.
crazy hectic world.
It is.
And you don't want to be that on the bottom of your list. Everything to do with your indoor environment. We're not trapped inside, we choose to be here.
Mm-hmm.
But we also need to choose to evaluate our environment and make sure it's as healthy as possible.
Absolutely.
So, and that has to do with the foods,
Foods
you
we
know, candles smell really nice, but they're emitting all kinds of stuff.
Toxins like crazy, even the wax. I
But
mean,
just,
everything. You have to really choose everything you bring into your home. Choose wisely.
that's exactly right. And the products that you use,
You put on your face.
For decades. In 1990, I overheard someone scheduling a carpet cleaning job.
Okay.
And I heard him say, hiring Citrus Solution is cheaper than the co-pays on my steroid breathing treatments.
Right?
And
Why would you want to live with that? Because you're going to lose your teeth if you keep that up.
and so I said, I'm going on that job.
Mm-hmm.
And they scheduled me, and I went and met him and his family. Now, his children were less reactive,
Okay.
but they were able to get off their allergy meds as long as we cleaned their carpet every 6 months. So that citrus product was probably mitigating the dust mite population. Another citrus ingredient was denaturing the allergens in the carpet from their droppings, and they received their symptoms abated. In his case, he was the most extreme, and even after his symptoms abated, they still recommended he get the steroid breathing treatments. Of course, he didn't.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
when you look at a lot of these treatments, you're supposed to be on them very short term.
Right.
And some people spend their lives on them. Check out your indoor environment. See whatever you can do to cause your symptoms to abate without relying on chemicals and drugs.
Right. And there's herbs that are out
That's
there and binders, but I do urge you, do not just go online, Google them, figure out what they are, because there are a lot of reactions. There are a lot of contraindications. There's also specific times that you have to take those to not have side effects or for them not to react with medications. So make sure that you go to a holistic practitioner that can help you navigate that, even with allergies, to make sure you're getting to the bottom of it and that you're not causing more harm, even with the herbals.
That's right.
Yeah.
Evaluating the whole picture.
Yes. You
If
can't just
you're
look
going
at
to
one.
pick and choose little items that you read on the internet,
Oh gosh.
they say in a courtroom, anyone who's representing themselves as an idiot for an attorney, you can really get caught up in all that stuff that's on the internet. But you don't have, in general, you're not going to have the experience level you need to evaluate response and even see really problematic side effects occurring.
There's a lot of misinformation on the internet with herbs and different things. I have clients who Dr. Google, say don't Dr. Google, please don't. And I have folks who will look up different herbs and people who will Google about symptoms or herbs, and there is information where people have come to me and said, what about this? I'm like, that's a toxic herb. It is going to kill your liver and your kidneys, you can't take that. Well, it's said on the internet. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yes, well, if it was on the internet, it must be true. The other thing is, what I see with people who spend too much time evaluating their health on the internet is a level of anxiety. They get
All
so
that information.
overwhelmed. That's exactly
It's
right.
coming at you. We're not made to have, made for book, you turn the paper, you get all this information constantly coming at us, and then you're actually doing a service to yourself, because your brain can't remember. The brain is lazy. The brain will just stop. It'll just be like, oh, you're going to give me that information anyways. Why do I need to remember that?
Right.
You know, but that's a different discussion, right?
Yeah.
We keep going, right?
Yeah.
So the key takeaways is really look at, if you're having a lot of symptoms, look at your home. Have you had water intrusion in the past? If you're concerned, just have a sample done. Do an air quality sample. But if you need someone who will take an air quality sample both inside and outside. And then from there, take it from there, see what comes back, and then take the next step. Don't worry about the what ifs if you're worrying about the what ifs, you're having anxiety. If you're looking at the shoulda, coulda, woulda in the past, that's depression. So just make sure to take it one step at a time. I know you don't have to necessarily rip out your whole house. You can use something. You can call Paul with Citrus Solutions, and they can actually help you and help you navigate through that. So then you can actually take control of your wellness.
Yes. When I'm training my people, I tell them, for many people, this is an emotional issue. You have to understand what they're going through can be really traumatic, and you have to be sympathetic.
Yes.
And understanding, and you need to deal with that side of the relationship as much as anything else. And sometimes it's just the peace of mind of knowing.
Yes.
That will get people to calm down enough to really truly evaluate with a practitioner, a holistic practitioner, their health condition, and start getting real answers and solutions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Paul.
I enjoyed it so much.
Same here. Thank you.
I love you. You're great.
Oh, thank you.
So,
thank you.
Thank you very much.